My name is Elodie Hayes. On the day I said goodbye to my parents at a rain-soaked cemetery in Vermont, my husband, Mason, stood beside the two caskets, held my hand, and said, "I want a divorce. You have nothing left for me to stay." Not a second of hesitation, not a single tear, just his wedding ring, removed and dropped coldly into my palm. 8 years of marriage ended in 8 words, drowned beneath the sound of dirt thudding onto the coffins of the people who gave me life. Have you ever been abandoned by the person you loved most at the lowest moment of your life? If you felt that before, leave a comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to follow the rest of this story, where betrayal is only the beginning. Because Mason thought I had lost everything, he had no idea I was holding a secret that could take down the very empire he was trying to steal. I returned to the penthouse close to midnight. The city below still glowed, traffic drifting by like streaks of light, but the place I used to call home was silent. The door was unlocked. I pushed open the thick glass panel and stepped in. The scent of Mason's usual peppermint oil still lingered in the air, but now it didn't feel comforting. It made me nauseous. He was sitting in the middle of the living room, red wine in hand, as if nothing had happened. Around him were brown cardboard boxes neatly labeled study, bathroom, suit jackets. He didn't even look up when I walked in. "You're back." I tightened my grip on the purse strap, trying to stay calm. "I thought I was kicked out already." He shrugged, still avoiding eye contact. "I figured you'd need a few hours to absorb the truth." I walked toward the kitchen island, staring at my own reflection in the stainless steel fridge door. "So, it was all about the money?" I asked, my voice rough. Mason set his glass down and finally looked up. His face felt like a stranger's now. "Not the money," he said, his tone unnervingly calm. "It's about position. Voice in the industry. You're the only daughter of Charles Wainwright. You're the key to doors other people spend decades knocking on." I stared at him. "Did you ever love me?" In that moment, I wanted to believe there had been something real during those 8 years. Even a small piece. Mason tilted his head as if weighing the question like a lawyer prepping an argument in court. "Didn't need to," he said bluntly. "Loving you wasn't part of the plan. You had to believe it. You promised you'd always protect me. And you promised you'd never doubt me." Mason stood, brushing lint from his gray blazer sleeve. "We both broke our vows. No one can stay in character forever." I had nothing left to say to someone like that. Instead, I pulled an old envelope from my coat pocket, its paper edges slightly yellowed. "Do you recognize this?" I held it up. Mason squinted. "What is it?" "My father sent it before he died. A cemetery staffer handed it to me after the service. It's his handwriting." I didn't know what compelled me to show Mason the letter. Maybe some last instinct to see a real reaction. But he only scoffed. "Elodie, if he left anything valuable, my lawyer would already know. The will was empty. The publishing house is going under. You need to accept that." I unfolded the letter. The paper was neatly creased, containing only a short handwritten line and a small ink-drawn map. "If you're reading this, it means we didn't get to speak one last time. Go to the place I once called our second home. Find what was never printed." Beneath that was a simple sketch. A forest, a small house, and the words, "Red Bird, 1987. "What the hell is that?" Mason stepped closer, frowning. I folded the letter back and slid it into my pocket. "None of your business. Wainwright Books was your father's company. You think I don't have a right to know?" "No." "And my father left what he wanted, to who he trusted." Mason sneered and turned away, back to his desk. He began packing up what used to be pieces of our life, wedding photos, the first book we chose together, a model of a tiny building I'd given him for our 3rd anniversary. He threw everything into the box without looking. "This penthouse is in my name," Mason said, not turning around. "You have 3 days to leave, or my lawyer will send papers." I stood still for a few more seconds, feeling all the memories once carefully placed here crumble into dust before my eyes. Then I walked away, this time because I chose to. I walked away, not because he forced me to, but because Mason never saw this coming. What I held in my hand wasn't a farewell. It was the beginning of a story never told. Hudson greeted me with a gray morning, light snow dusting the rooftop and windows of a bookstore called Juniper and Thistle. I dragged my suitcase up the wooden steps, wind slicing through the thin coat I hadn't yet replaced from my old life. The door opened before I could knock. "You're exactly 3 minutes late." Savannah Blake hadn't changed. Auburn hair twisted into a messy bun, fuzzy sweater and a steaming mug of coffee in hand. But in her eyes, there it was again. The one thing I remembered most from college. The look that never asked for explanations when you were hurting. Upstairs, I cleared a space in the book attic. New mattress, fireplace works. I followed her to the top floor, where the ceiling sloped low, golden lamplight glowed softly, and books were stacked like old friends waiting to tell stories. I didn't speak much that day. I washed mugs, shelved books, wiped dust off picture frames. Savannah didn't ask. She let me breathe. That night, I opened the letter again. The map was rough but clear. A forest, a stream, a house with a bird symbol. Redbird, 1987. Written in slanted print at the bottom right corner. "Your dad mentioned that place once," Savannah said from across the old wooden table, chin resting on her hand, voice low. "Back when we were sophomores, he came to visit campus, remember? It was raining that day. He used to tell stories about a place with a red roof, the one where he wrote his first manuscript, but I always thought it was just a literary anecdote." Savannah raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe he made it sound like an anecdote on purpose, so no one would believe it." I was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you think I'm wasting my time?" She took a sip of tea and set the mug down slowly. "Elodie, if you're truly the heir to something worth knowing, then stop looking for someone to confirm it. Confirm it yourself." "You know why I opened this bookstore?" I shook my head. "Because I needed to remind myself that it's not the people who read the most who understand. It's the ones brave enough to believe in the story they carry inside. You carry a story. Don't let someone like Mason steal it." I smiled faintly. "What if I told you that story could be worth tens of millions of dollars?" Savannah didn't flinch. "Then that's all the more reason not to let someone like him get it." We sat there for a long time, until all the shop lights had gone out, leaving only the sound of wind slipping through the glass panes. I picked up my phone and searched for anything related to Redbird, but nothing came up. No address, no photos. Only old articles about a small villa once rented by anonymous writers in Vermont during the 80s. I turned to Savannah. "I don't know where to start." "Start with the map itself," she said, pulling out a small magnifying glass like she'd been waiting for that question all night. "Let's see. This isn't regular printer paper. It has watermarks, drawn with a fountain pen, and down here in the corner there's a faded stamp." I leaned in close. A red sail almost erased but still legible, Green Hollow Land Survey, 1986. Savannah raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like something out of a fairy tale." I grabbed my phone and searched. A few seconds later, an old land plot map appeared. Green Hollow was a private tract of land, once owned by the Alder family, now abandoned. It was deep in the woods, near a small town called Crawley's Bend, about a 3-hour drive from Hudson. Savannah winked. "I've got a car, and gas, and chicken sandwiches." I laughed for the first time since the funeral. "You haven't changed." "Neither have you," she said seriously. "The only difference is now you know how much you're worth." We packed up, reprinted the map, charged our phones, and threw a few essentials into a bag. I had no idea what was waiting for me. An abandoned house, an old will, or a final message from the father, who never got to say goodbye. I was searching for what should have been mine, not because I carried the Wainwright name, but because I am Elodie. And this time, I wasn't backing down. By 3 a.m., Savannah and I reached Concord. The sky was still pitch black, lit only by headlights and a sliver of moon peeking through gray clouds. The storage warehouse sat at the end of a dirt road, hidden behind old pine trees and a rusted sign that barely read, "Wainwright Archival Storage, private use only." We parked at the forest's edge. No lights came from inside. I stepped out, zipped my coat to my chin, the folded map in my pocket, my palms ice cold. "This is really the place?" Savannah asked, her voice barely above a whisper, like sound might disturb the stillness. I nodded, pointing to the mark on my father's hand-drawn map, a symbol of an open book with 5 numbers, B17.4. I remembered being a little girl, coming here with my father, playing between stacks of documents that reached the ceiling, the scent of old paper and sun-dried pine blending into something uniquely his. He used to say, "This place holds the ideas that never made it into books. Sometimes, the most valuable things are the ones left unpublished." But before I could reach the door, the sharp stench of smoke hit me in the face. 8. Savannah threw out an arm. As we stepped closer, red lights flashed from the side of the building, and then I saw it, smoke, thick, curling into the sky like a living thing. A siren wailed in the distance. A fire truck. I yanked at the door, but it burned hot to the touch. A firefighter grabbed my arm. "You can't go in there." "There are documents in there. My father's unpublished work." "We know, but the fire started from inside. Could have been electrical or intentional. We got the call about 15 minutes ago." I froze. 15 minutes? Yes, but from the state of the blaze, it had to have started at least an hour earlier. Savannah turned pale. "Someone doesn't want you to find anything." I couldn't hear anything except my heartbeat pounding in my ears. 15 minutes. If Savannah and I hadn't stopped for gas, we might have gotten here sooner. We might have seen who it was. I stepped back, hands trembling. A metal cabinet near the entrance had fallen, half charred, half intact. I slipped through the narrow space, eyes scanning the cooling ashes. On the floor, beside a pile of burned books, a torn piece of stiff paper, like something ripped from a frame. I bent down, my hands shaking, and picked it up. A puzzle piece. A fragment from an old frame, with handwriting on the back. Redbird Cottage, 1963, Lakeview Route. I handed it to Savannah. She stared at the handwriting. "This isn't your father's. It's my mother's." So she knew about the cottage, maybe more than just knew. Another firefighter approached. "We'll investigate, but this fire? It doesn't look like an accident. There are traces of accelerant in 3 separate areas." 3 areas? I looked up at the warehouse. Entire storage cabinets had collapsed into ash, but the southwest corner, the section that housed my father's B-series manuscripts, was the most severely burned. B17.4. Exactly where he'd marked. "Did anyone come in here today?" I asked, desperate. The firefighter shook his head. "No cameras, no alarms, and no one reported the fire except for a single anonymous call. Male voice." Savannah murmured under her breath, just for me to hear. "Maybe Mason already knows." Inside me, a darker theory was forming. Worse than Mason. Someone inside the company already knew. Someone who understood my father well enough to know exactly what to destroy. I looked again at the torn puzzle piece. No color, no detail. Only a sliver of roof and the edge of a ginkgo tree. But on the back? It held a clear direction. Lakeview Route. "We have to go, before someone else does," I said. Savannah nodded, her eyes sharp. "You sure you don't want to rest tonight? If someone burned down an entire warehouse to erase evidence, then Redbird Cottage might be next." The old house in New Canaan still smelled of cinnamon and pine, the scent my mother loved every late fall. In the second-floor bedroom, I paused as afternoon light stretched across the floor, catching on the walnut-framed mirror at the center of the room. That mirror had been part of my mother's morning ritual. I remembered her sitting there, brushing her hair, applying cream, occasionally asking me which scarf matched her new knitted sweater. Every time she adjusted her hair, she stared into the mirror for a long time, as if she were searching for something beneath the reflection. I stepped closer, fingers gliding over the surface now faded with time. A small scratch along the bottom edge of the frame caught my eye. I slid a fingernail under it. A slight gap opened, just enough to slip in a fingertip. I took a deep breath, then gently pried open the panel behind the mirror. A hollow compartment appeared, holding a thin leather notebook wrapped in worn blue velvet. I opened it, my hands unsteady. The first page held the slanted handwriting I knew so well. Personal journal, Meredith Wainwright. Not to keep, but to record. For my child. In case one day you need it. I sat down on the floor, back against the bed, eyes slowly scanning each line of my mother's handwriting. April, that year. Your father wants to hold on to Wainwright books at all costs, but they're applying pressure. Gideon Marks is back. He didn't say much, but his eyes haven't changed, still the gaze of a man who refuses to lose. Melody knows nothing, and we want to keep it that way. But if things go wrong, at least she needs the chance to choose right, not be blinded by numbers and promises. The next page was fragmented, like she had written while watching, hiding. They offered to buy the rights to the Black edition, the unpublished collection. It all belongs to Charles. But Gideon knows about it. I overheard a call. He's negotiating with a German publisher planning to use the rights in exchange for a stake. I warned Charles. But he didn't believe Gideon would go that far. I did. Those eyes don't know how to retreat. If something happens to your father or me, find the cabin. Redbird knows. Don't trust the ones who once shared your table, who toasted with you. Gideon isn't just a traitor, he's a quiet destroyer. Everything started to piece together now, a blurry image sharpening. And not a single color in it felt safe. Savannah walked in, holding 2 cups of hot tea. She saw the journal open, then sat beside me without asking. Your mom wrote all this? She knew everything, about Gideon, about the Black edition, about the Redbird cabin. Savannah leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. So, it's not just Mason. Gideon's underneath all of it. I closed my eyes, images came flooding back. My father sitting at his desk late at night, desk lamp casting shadows over a manuscript, eyes tired but never surrendering. Back then, I didn't understand why he refused to sell the company, even when the monthly reports were bleeding red. Now, I did. He wasn't protecting a brand, he was fighting a scheme he knew he might not live long enough to stop. What is Redbird, Elle? Savannah asked softly. I looked down at the page. Redbird, always capitalized, always followed by a period like a silent password. Maybe a person, I said, or the name of the place, the cabin, or maybe something my mom wanted me to understand once I was ready. If she believed Redbird would lead you to the truth, then we should believe that too. I gripped the journal. Gideon isn't the type to wait. If he's already back, and if Mason's working with him, that cabin might not be secret much longer. Savannah's gaze hardened. Then we need to go, before they do. My mother had left instructions. She hadn't written for a week, daughter, lost and unsure. She wrote for someone she believed would carry on what they had to leave behind. The cabin. Redbird Cottage sat nestled behind tall pines, its path buried in damp moss and fallen leaves. Wind slipped through the broken rooftop, making the old beams creak like the breath of the past. Savannah killed the engine. You're sure this is it? A long time ago, I whispered. My parents called this place the untouched corner. Like the world stopped at the edge of those woods. Savannah glanced around. We should go in before it gets dark. The door wasn't locked. The hinges sagged, but a gentle push opened it. No signs of recent entry. I stepped in, heart pounding as the first light spilled across a dust-covered living room. The deep red rug was still there. The old sofa, the upright piano in the corner waiting quietly for its next note. We moved through each room, the study, the bedroom, the small kitchen with chestnut cabinets. The air felt frozen, like the place had been sealed since some distant summer. The attic was exactly as I remembered it, low ceiling, arched window, and an old chest draped with a cream lace cloth. But I wasn't here for memories. Behind the short bookshelf, one floorboard was slightly off color. I knelt down, pried it gently. Beneath was a dark wooden box, no lock. Only 2 faintly carved initials, E.H. and M.H.W. I didn't need to ask Savannah. I opened the lid. Inside was a thick envelope sealed with red wax, a small silver USB, and a short handwritten letter. I took out the letter and unfolded it carefully. My dearest Elodie, If you're reading this, it means your parents are no longer with you in the way you've always known. But we're still here. In every word, every decision we made to protect you. Inside this envelope is a private will, entirely separate from the company's legal structure. Your father kept the rights to the Black Edition, the collection of unpublished manuscripts, and has granted full authority to you, Elodie Hayes, the only person he believed could protect its true value. I gripping the page. Savannah quietly sat down beside me, saying nothing, not reacting. She let me go on. The USB contained a video my father recorded 3 months ago, after Gideon Marks resurfaced. He wasn't sure if Gideon was acting alone, but his instincts told him someone inside had joined him. And that person might be Mason. If true, then my father's greatest fear was playing out. They would try to legally acquire the company, then sell the publishing rights to a foreign conglomerate, erasing our family's literary legacy in 1 generation. I gasped, letting the letter fall, reaching for the USB. Savannah, did you bring your laptop? She opened her bag and pulled out a fully charged device. I plugged in the USB. The screen turned black, then slowly focused. My father, sitting at his home desk wearing a white shirt, eyes staring straight into the camera. My daughter, he began, voice low, if you're watching this, it means I didn't get to say this in person. And it also means you're standing at a crossroads you didn't choose, but have to walk through. My throat tightened. My eyes stung. Gideon Marks is a fox. But he's not working alone. He needs an inside hand. To leak information, to erode trust within the company, to reshape ownership. Mason, your husband, once came to me proposing we expand Wainwright Books internationally. I declined. The next day, I got a call from Gideon. That wasn't a coincidence. My father paused, his eyes flickered with a tremble. I don't have absolute proof, but every thread points to one thing. They want the Black Edition. And they're willing to do whatever it takes to get it. Savannah glanced at me, her expression tense. I didn't look away from the screen. I moved those rights out of the company long ago. They're held in a personal trust, not listed anywhere on corporate records. They won't find them. Unless you give up. He looked directly at me, eyes deeper than I remembered. Never sign anything under pressure. Never hand over something you don't fully understand. And never let them steal what we left for you, not just assets, but meaning. The video stopped. Part of me wanted to collapse. He had felt so near yet so far. But another part, stronger, was waking up inside me like a rising tide. Savannah broke the silence. Do you realize what this means? She said, serious. If Mason is negotiating a buyout, he has no idea the Black Edition is outside the system. He thinks it's part of the shared assets. And if he finds out the truth, he'll do everything he can to claim it or destroy it. Savannah closed the laptop. So what's the next move? I took the sealed will and USB in hand and looked around the cabin, my parents' secret fortress. We protect what's left, but first, we need Mason to believe I still don't know a thing. You're gonna play the heartbroken wife again? Just once more, until I know for sure who's really pulling the strings. The attic above the Juniper and Thistle bookstore had now become the operations room for a plan my mother, if she were still alive, would have called a war of words. Savannah sat at the old painted wooden desk, eyes fixed on the laptop screen while I ran a final check on the encrypted files. The scanned proof of Black Edition ownership, the video my father recorded before his death, and the audio of Mason's conversation with Gideon. All neatly packaged in a folder titled, For the Real Stakeholder. All right, the email account's set, Savannah said, fingers tapping the keyboard. Sender name, redbird.inquiry@protonmail.com. No IP trace, no location tracking. They won't be able to find us. My eyes stayed locked on the USB plugged into the side of the laptop. I want this to go to every board member, not to beg, but so they can't say they didn't know. Are you ready? Once we hit send, there's no taking it back. Send it. A soft ping sounded. Something irreversible had been set in motion. 30 minutes later, anonymous emails began arriving in each board member's inbox. To those who still care about the true value of Wainwright Books, This is what you weren't told in the last meeting. At the same time, I opened my phone and scrolled through the business news. Mason's face was everywhere. CNBC, New York Times Business, even an exclusive interview in The Atlantic with a smug headline. From lawyer to CEO, Mason Hayes and the $80 million deal, redefining American publishing. I clicked play on the video. In a sleek conference room, Mason leaned back in his perfectly tailored gray suit, chin tilted slightly, the kind of angle he knew made him look confident. We're undergoing a full restructuring to lead Wainwright Books into the global era. No longer confined to print, we're expanding into digital platforms and partnering with top publishers across Europe. The reporter asked, there are rumors that an unreleased intellectual property known as the Black Edition will be central to this deal. Can you confirm? Mason smiled, leaning slightly forward. I won't comment on assets that haven't been formally audited, but we're committed to leveraging every viable resource to deliver maximum value to our shareholders. I stopped the video. What do you see? Savannah asked. I see that he knows where I am, I said slowly. Not physically, but he knows. He's seized every mainstream channel. He thinks no one's bold enough to challenge him out in the open right now. Savannah frowned. So what do we do? I turned to her. We don't fight in the noise, we step aside. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. Scrolled down to a name I hadn't touched in 3 years. Louise Prescott. Louise had once been my mother's friend, a seasoned investigative journalist who'd written exposés uncovering IP manipulation across the publishing world. I never thought I'd need to call her. But when I was 14, my mother once said, if the truth ever has no place left, find someone who still dares to speak it. I pressed call. 1 ring, then 2. A low, steady voice answered. Prescott speaking. This is Elodie Hayes, Meredith's daughter. Silence. Then her voice softened. Your parents told me that if you ever called, it meant the truth was in danger. I looked out the window, watching light rain fall over the rooftops of Hudson. I have a story, and proof, but I need someone who can tell it, uncensored, unblocked. Send everything. And get ready, once this goes live, no one's gonna call you the abandoned wife ever again. I'm ready. 2 days later, Louise Prescott's Sunday Insider released a special edition titled Selling Legacy for Cash. Who's really buying Wainwright Books? At the same time, my father's video, his warning about Black Edition being hunted for foreign sale, premiered exclusively on the Prescott Unfiltered platform. Views climbed by the hour, shareholders began to react. 3 board members called to postpone the press conference. 1 requested an independent audit of copyright ownership. Across from me, Savannah opened a new email from the Redbird account, her eyes scanning the screen intently. Someone on the board replied, they want to meet in person, anonymous, before the press conference. I looked at her, heart tightening. If one replies, there may be a second. Maybe, for the first time in years, they're starting to remember why they chose Wainwright Books in the first place, and it wasn't profit. So what's next? We bring the curtain down, but Mason needs to step into the light himself. Savannah nodded slightly, sensing the rest of the plan still forming but not yet revealed. We had time. Not much. And I needed to be the one standing there when he walked up to that podium thinking he'd won. The ballroom at the Grand Astoria Hotel lit up with camera flashes. The backdrop displayed the new Wainwright Books logo. A cold, modern emblem, completely alien to the literary legacy my parents once protected. Mason stood at the podium, gray suit hugging his frame, hair slicked perfectly into place, wearing that familiar half-smile I once mistook for poise. We believe this $80 million merger will open a new era of global knowledge for Wainwright, no longer limited by geography, language, or outdated thinking. The ballroom doors swung open. I walked in. All heads turned toward me. A few reporters recognized me and pointed their cameras. Mason froze mid-sentence, his head tilted slightly, lips tightening. I didn't wait for permission. I walked directly to the front. My voice rang out, clear and steady. My name is Elodie Hayes, only daughter of Charles and Meredith Wainwright, and I request to speak. I stepped onto the stage, standing beside Mason. He reached to touch my shoulder, but I stepped back. opened my leather bag and pulled out a USB drive and a small remote for the screen behind us. I won't take much time, but before anyone continues selling what doesn't belong to them, I think you all need to see this. The screen went black. Then my father's face appeared. Recorded at the Redbird cabin. The image was grainy, but his voice was unmistakably clear. I, Charles Wainwright, confirm that the Black Edition is personal property, not under the company's management portfolio, and is legally entrusted in full to my daughter, Elodie Hayes. Any attempt to use, sell, or collaborate involving this collection without Elodie's written consent is an act of infringement. Whispers broke out across the room. I continued. Along with this video, I submit the official independent trust records confirming all copyrights under the Black Edition have been registered in my name, Elodie Hayes, since 2019. These documents are notarized by the law office of Prescott & Finch. An assistant rushed up with a handheld mic. I took it. And finally, to help you understand why someone would want to quietly sell these rights abroad without board approval, please listen to the following audio. I pressed play. Mason's voice came through cold and unmistakably clear. She's nothing without the Wainwright name. And I'll take everything, every copyright, every share. Then I'll watch her walk away with nothing. Just like she came in. Silence fell over the room. One board member stood up. I move to immediately suspend Mr. Hayes' executive authority and request an emergency board meeting. Sounds of agreement echoed from several sides. The moderator stepped forward, quickly announcing the press conference would be concluded due to internal matters. I stepped down from the podium, walking past Mason. He looked at me, eyes bloodshot like a man cornered. Elodie, you don't know what you're doing, he hissed through clenched teeth. You're wrong, Mason. This time I know exactly what I'm doing. That night, I returned to the attic in Hudson, exhausted and strangely at peace. Savannah wasn't there. I figured she was at the bookstore, probably setting up wine and popcorn like she always did after a battle. I walked into the room, pulled off my shoes when my phone buzzed. A message. No sender name, just a photo. Savannah. Her hands were tied. Duct tape across her mouth. Her eyes filled with fear. Behind her, a cement wall. A cold yellow light from a low ceiling. Like a basement. Then a single line of text. If you want her alive, don't open your mouth again. My hands shook violently. I staggered back, almost dropping the phone. My mind spun. Who did this? Mason? Gideon? Or someone I hadn't seen yet? I lowered myself onto the bed, forcing steady breaths. No panic. No rash moves. I had to think like my father would. Fast, precise, with emotion in check. I opened my laptop. Accessed the bookstore's security cameras. Installed last year by Savannah after a rare book theft. Maybe I'd catch something. But the system read, connection lost since 7:17 p.m. Right after the press conference ended. They had been waiting. I stared at the screen, then looked at the leather bag still sitting on the corner table, where I'd kept the original will and the backup. USB. Savannah was the one person I trusted completely. And now she was tied up somewhere, gagged and scared. Because she helped me tell the truth. I bowed my head, fists clenched. They thought I'd stay silent out of fear of losing the last person I had left? No, I would find her. But this time, I wouldn't step into the light again. I'd walk through the shadows. Like someone they never expected to fear. The call came before midnight. A blocked number. No ringtone, a soft buzz. I sat up in the dark, hands trembling slightly as I lifted the phone to my ear. If you want your friend to live, the male voice said, calm and cold. Don't give the USB to the FBI. Don't hand it to anyone, and don't try to be clever. We know you spoke to the press, and we know you've made copies. But if any more content goes public, what you'll get next won't be a photo, it'll be video. I want proof Savannah is alive. The line went dead. 5 minutes later, a short clip came through by text. Savannah, tied tightly to a metal chair, wrists bruised, lips cracked. A dim light glowed from behind her, casting long, twisted shadows. But she was alive. The next morning, I went alone to the meeting point. an abandoned warehouse on the Jersey City docks. Fog draped the harbor. Rusted shipping containers sat like silent witnesses to dirty dealings. A black SUV waited, the door opened, a man stepped out. Gideon Marks. He looked older than the photos I'd seen, but his eyes were exactly as my mother had written, never blinking when he lies. "You came alone," he said, his voice a smooth blend of British and German, like a man negotiating trade. "I want to see my friend," I said. Gideon nodded. A steel door behind the warehouse creaked open. 2 men dragged Savannah out, hands still tied but no gag. She looked at me, her eyes trembling, then stealing. "Good," Gideon said. "You still have the original?" I held up the US. "Here's the condition," I said. "You release her first." He laughed. "You're as naive as your mother. I know you've made copies. I don't need the original. I need you to stop." He stepped closer, eyes scanning me like he could read every plan forming in my mind. Mason was a pawn, easy to manipulate, ambitious, stupid, starved for credit. He thought he was steering the ship. Really? He was just the doorman. "And me?" I asked. "You're the only one with the power to tear the door off its hinges. If you want Savannah to live," Gideon continued, "you'll let this whole thing die. You'll erase every copy. You'll call the video fake. And then disappear. I give you the USB, I said. You release her. The rest, I need time to think." "You think you have a choice?" "I do," I said softly, "because I'm the only one you can't control." I tossed him the USB. One of his guards caught it mid-air. Savannah was pushed toward me. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling her body frail, her hair smelling of smoke and concrete. We left the warehouse. On the drive back, Savannah fell asleep in the passenger seat, drained. I kept driving, empty inside, but with my hand resting on my phone. 1 hour before I left the house, I had already sent a full copy of the USB files to Louise Prescott, the investigative journalist my mother once trusted. Attached was a single instruction. "If I don't contact you within 12 hours, release everything." 3 hours after handing Gideon the fake USB, I received a text. "Received. Be careful, they're planning the final move." I turned off the screen. I wasn't shaking anymore. Only one thing stayed firm in me. I had given Gideon exactly what he wanted, but it wasn't the original. He thought he had won. But what he held was only the beginning of the story. The rest, the real ending, was still mine. And I would decide when to close it. 1 week later, I sat in my new office on the 6th floor of a weathered red brick building in Brooklyn. Frosted glass on the door read, "Hayes and Redbird Literary Trust." The first printed copy of the Black Edition, Writings Never Seen, sat on the desk. Hand-stitched spine, wine-colored cloth cover, just like the kind my mother used to love. The news broke Monday morning across major outlets from New York to London. International copyright laundering scandal exposed. Mason Hayes and Gideon Marks face charges over attempted seizure of multi-million-dollar literary estate. Savannah Blake, independent journalist, found imprisoned at isolated Vermont compound. Elodie Hayes, from abandoned wife to legal owner of one of America's most valuable, unpublished literary collections. It all hit like a wave. Savannah sat beside me at the book launch. She was still a little thin, her left wrist bore a faint scar, but her eyes were sharp again, no fear left. "You should warm up," she said, grinning. "You've got 5 minutes. I stood, stepping backstage. Louise Prescott was there, camera in hand. "I'm holding the rights to this footage until you're an old woman. In that case, aim the lens lower. I'm not getting any taller." Louise laughed, then handed me an envelope. "Your parents wrote this on their last day before entering witness protection. They said to give it to you only if you ever stood where they once hoped you'd stand." The host signaled. I walked onto the stage, where a simple wooden podium stood beneath a red feather logo. Redbird. I took a deep breath. Then began. "I'm not standing here because someone chose me. I'm standing here because I refuse to be rewritten as a footnote in the legacy my parents built, and defined by their pain." I looked out at the front row. Former editors from Wheeler Publishing, authors once pushed aside, independent booksellers, and Savannah, sitting upright like every word I said was being recorded in her memory. We call this place trust, not because it's a foundation, but because I want to rebuild what we thought we'd lost. Trust in what really matters. I was once the person no one invited to the negotiating table. I was the wife of, the silent heir, the woman assumed to do nothing. And then they underestimated me. After the speech, I returned backstage. I opened the envelope Louise had given me. Inside was a short note. My mother's handwriting. You're holding this, it means we didn't protect you enough, but you protected yourself. Red Bird isn't a place, it's you. The name you chose out of the ashes. The one they never saw coming. I folded the note, tucked it carefully into my pocket. A young staffer approached, handing me the first finished copy of the book, her hands trembling with emotion. I read this manuscript, she said. Mr. Charles's work. It feels like he's still writing. Because he never stopped writing. And neither did I, the woman they never planned for, but who would never be forgotten again. What about you? Have you ever stood in front of a truth that forced you to choose between justice and loyalty? Would you stay silent to protect someone you love, or speak out, knowing the price? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Because sometimes all it takes is one story like yours to give someone the courage to step out of the dark. And if this story touched something deep inside you, hit follow to never miss the next powerful journey through family, betrayal, and how we learn to stand on our own. I'll see you in the next story, where sometimes the truth isn't what we fear, but the only thing that sets us free.